everyone.
Hello again.
We are in the Proclaimer's book, page 198. We're in chapter 14. They are no part of the world. The subheading is When the World Had Its Holidays. So I will read. When Jehovah's Witnesses cast aside religious teachings that had pagan roots, they also quit sharing in many customs that were similarly tainted. But for a time, certain holidays were not given the careful scrutiny that they needed. One of these was Christmas. This holiday was celebrated yearly, even by members of the Watchtower Society's headquarters staff at the Bethel home in Brooklyn, New York. For many years, they had been aware that December 25 was not the correct date, but they reasoned that the date had long been popularly associated with the birth of the Savior, and that doing good for others was proper on any day. However, after further investigation of the subject, the members of the Society's headquarters staff, as well as the staffs of the Society's branch offices in England and in Switzerland, decided to stop sharing in Christmas festivities. So no Christmas celebrations were held there after 1926.
By the way, if you hear noises in the background, that might be thunder because it's a rather heavy rain has just started to fall, so it's not your technology. It's Niagara Falls with the heavy rain in the middle of July, which is welcome. Next paragraph. Okay, so 1926 is the turning point. What happens in 1926? Well, one thing we do know is this is 10 years since Russell, so he's died, and things are changing. And you have to question them. Why is so many things changing at the same time? Here we're told, R.H. Barber, that's not Nelson Barber, by the way, but Barber spelled B-A-R-B-E-R, a member of the headquarters staff who made a thorough investigation of the origin of Christmas customs and the fruitage that these were yielding, presented the results in a radio broadcast. That information was also published in the Golden Age of December 12, 1928. It was a thorough expose of the God-dishonoring roots of Christmas. Since then, the pagan roots of Christmas customs have become general public knowledge, but few people make changes in their way of life as a result. On the other hand, Jehovah's Witnesses were willing to make needed changes in order to be more acceptable as servants of Jehovah.
When shown that celebrating the birth of Jesus had actually become of greater interest to people than the ransom provided by his death, that revelry of the holiday and the spirit in which many gifts were given did not honor God, and that the Magi whose gift-giving was being imitated were actually demon-inspired astrologers, that parents set an example for their children in lying by what they told them about Santa Claus, that St. Nicholas, Santa Claus, was admittedly another name for the devil himself, and that such festivals were, as acknowledged by Cardinal Newman in his Essay on the Development of Christian Doctrine, quote, the very instruments and appendages of demon worship, end of quote, the Church had adopted. When made aware of these things, Jehovah's Witnesses promptly and permanently stopped having any part in Christmas celebrations. That's a very short quote. Just dropped in there, plop. You don't know what's the context of what he's talking about.
Yeah, well, more to say about Cardinal Newman in that book, particularly, soon. Jehovah's Witnesses have good times with their families and friends, but they do not participate in holidays and celebrations that are linked with pagan gods, as is true of such holidays as Easter, New Year's Day, May Day, and Mother's Day. Like the early Christians, they do not even celebrate birthdays. They also respectfully refrain from sharing in national holidays that memorialize political or military events and refrain from giving worshipful honor to national heroes. Why? because Jehovah's Witnesses are no part of the world. Repeat it after me. So, it needs to be said, many Christians also object to Christmas. Many Christians object to Easter. Many Christians do not celebrate national holidays, or at least salute the flag or go to war. And I'm one of them. But at least in the case of those Christians, it's not a mandate from above. But you present the change at Christmas around 1926-28 as if somehow the Spirit showed everybody in the headquarters staffs at the same time that these things were wrong, and wrong for your conscience as well as mine. That's the difference, isn't it? Where's Rutherford here? Is he mentioned once?
Was it a vote or was it a mandate? You have to ask.
We know, if we've studied that period, 1926 to 1928, that J.F. Rutherford is the man moving the furniture. And Russell's moved out. He's been moved out. Even his books are no longer being pressed. So it looks like, from the vantage point of history, and for everybody that was there, J. William Schnell, for instance, who was there at German headquarters and American headquarters during this period, it looks like this was a complete takeover. And Rutherford's way of getting rid of the rubble left over from the Russell era is to offend as many of them as possible, as quickly as possible. So between 1925 and about 1931, when the new name is taken, he does it very thoroughly. And Christmas is part of the discoveries, the new light.
So it's a kind of a distraction too. It distracts you from what was even taught by Russell.
It sure does.
Give them something else to pay attention to, and how to feel righteous about yourself.
How to separate you from everybody else, including your Russellite ancestors.
Yeah.
Well, that sentence, the second one down from the top of page 199, for many years they had been aware that December 25th was not the correct date. By the way, that's not the consensus of Christendom. It's a well-held position among scholars, but it's not unanimous. That's not decisive at all when it comes to the practice of the day, because the church doesn't just celebrate the day; they celebrate the season of Advent, which is well more than a month.
They're not celebrating the day either. What day it is. It's an event that happened. And so they're celebrating the birth of Christ when they do celebrate.
And they admit that in the same sentence, right? They say, but they reasoned, even though they knew the date was wrong, they reasoned that the date was wrong, but nevertheless, they're going to what? It's popularly associated with the birth of the Savior, and that doing good for others was proper on any day. And I agree with that reasoning.
Yeah.
What are you going to do? Are you going to take every day off the calendar that's in any way associated with a pagan god? Because what would that mean?
It means he owns all those dates. God doesn't anymore.
Yeah, there's hundreds, nay thousands of pagan gods, and they all have days, months, seasons associated with their worship. Yeah. So following this logic, you would have finally dismantled the calendar. But of course you can't take the days or the months. They're still there.
Although
now
at one point they did try to. Somebody in the organization thought it would be a good idea to change the calendar, because all the names of the months and even the days of the week are associated with pagan gods.
Not all of them, but enough of them. Let's
figures, like, political figures or whatever. You've got things that you can say, well, no, I don't want to be associated with that. So then you have to get rid of everything.
Well, that's exactly what they would have done. But when that was suggested, and by the way, you can find the articles online of when this became a movement among Jehovah's Witnesses in the Rutherford era, let's take the days of the week and rename them, because after all, at least several of them are named after very obviously pagan gods. Thor's Day.
Yeah, Wednesday.
Woden's Day. Woden, this is the devil of Scandinavian religion. So, yeah, you can go crazy, and thank God, Jehovah's Witnesses should thank God that saner heads prevailed at headquarters, who said, no, this is going too far.
Yeah.
But the Christmas thing was done already. The Easter thing was done already. A lot of them were done. Birthdays had been taken away, I think, already, too. So rather than double reverse themselves within a decade or two, no, they just stopped there. But consistently practiced, this would mean everything is taken away from Christians in the way of celebrations because of some observable pagan connection. One can't help but think of Dana Carvey when we're reasoning like this, right?
Yeah, well, I wondered, when they say that about Satan, what do they say that Santa Claus is, and that St. Nicholas, Santa Claus, was admittedly another name of the devil. I immediately thought of Dana Carvey, his church lady, right? Because that's what he does with the word Satan.
And Santa.
And then mixes all the letters around, and then you've got Santa. And that was the way in which the church lady determined that this was a wicked thing.
We need to say that Santa Claus was not part of the worship. We've been to church for over 30 years, and Santa Claus is not part of the worship at Christmas season, Advent season. Mm-hmm. He's not even in the sanctuary, by the way. There's no pictures of Santa.
Yeah.
It's all about Jesus. So if you do see a tree, or you see wreaths, or you see candles, and it's all changed at that season for the reason that this is Advent season, the symbolism is now all appropriated to the person of Christ and his birth, yes, but not only his birth, also Advent, second coming.
Yeah. The idea that God, out of love, takes it takes his love to the extent that he provides a means. So them saying that about the ransom too. I mean, when you go to Christmas services, the whole point is they believe that God loved us so much that he sends the Son of God and redeems us. So the ransom is part of the celebration. Is without the birth of Christ, you would have no Savior. You would have no means of salvation. That's all talked about during Christmas season.
Yes, it is.
And Christmas is more than just a day. They don't just meet on Christmas Day. The whole leading up to Christmas and after Christmas is associated with discussion of why we should honor God and why we should honor Christ.
This is why the word revelry used here about the holiday season is just wrong. I went to church till I was about 15, and I never associated revelry with Christmas. It was very warm, for one thing, because for once during the year, people were free to get together with their extended family.
Yeah.
That was wonderful, and I missed it when I stopped celebrating it as a witness. But other than that, it was about what God has done, and I knew that at Christmas season. Going to church, it was not about what worldlings do at Christmas. That's
right.
A different thing.
You never separate, or the Watchtower never separates the secular from the religious. I don't know. They have visions of Christmas parties at businesses. Like revelry and wild living and stuff like that. That's not what most people associate Christmas with. It's with home and family and church and hymns and
eternity.
Yeah.
All these things mean in eternity. Mm-hmm. And as for this stuff about demon-inspired astrologers, go to any commentary on Matthew, because Matthew's the only one who records the visit of the Magi. Go to any commentary on Matthew. Go to Alfred Edersheim, we've already cited. Go to him instead of R.H. Barber, whoever he is, one of your headquarters staff. Go to Edersheim or any Matthew commentary and find out if any of them, and I've never found one yet, so I'm challenging everybody out there, go to any of those commentaries and tell us if you find one or two that go along with this take on Christmas. What's the reason Matthew embeds this story right in the birth account, building up to Christ's baptism?
Yeah.
Why does he do that? Is it to show us that we should watch out for demons and we should be like the church lady looking under every stone for Satan? Or is it to celebrate the fact that pagans from the end of the world come to worship the Christ child? Yeah. And you should too.
Yeah.
But of course they don't worship the Christ child, do they? They say that's wrong. They say it's unchristian to do that. So of course they're going to find Satan under every stone.
Yeah.
And behind every gift.
Yeah, this bottom line here that they say, why do they not celebrate these things? It's because Jehovah's Witnesses are no part of the world. Well, I would say it's true in the sense that they're no part of the world. It's a desire to be no part of anybody. It's a desire to be different,
Yeah.
not so much because, this is right or wrong. It promoted a distance between you as a witness and everyone else. So it kept distancing you from your own family, from the church, from Christians in the world. You have no part of anybody. You are making yourself exclusive. And it's pride building effort to do that.
And by the way, if you're an ex-witness or even a present Jehovah's Witness and you're watching this, you know in your heart that if it weren't for the fact that Christmas is prohibited to you,
you probably would be
you would be practicing it for reasons of your own, and some good and probably not so good. They might be worldly thinking, but on the other hand, they might be right thinking, like the Russellites obviously were when they were thinking, this is about Jesus, this is not about demons.
So I would suggest do your own research. Don't just rely on this thorough expo say that this barber did, or even what the society gives you. What you will note is they always give you the same books, the same quotes, year after year. It's
You
the
mean
same
they never
things.
quote Edersheim or Matthew Commentary?
I've never seen them quote the commentaries on the meaning of these Bible texts. So do your own homework, do your own research, and then if you decide, no, my conscience says no, fine. But don't dictate your conscience to everyone else. Now, I've been on both sides of the fence here. I've been a non-celebrating of Christmas.
You even were a church lady.
I was even a church lady, yes. But I didn't use that argument, which I find very funny.
We mean by that, by the way, she was church secretary.
I was a church secretary for a while, yes. Yeah. But I would say do your own research. It was years out of the Watchtower before I decided to do any kind of celebrating of Christmas, because I needed to thoroughly look at the reasons people had for not doing it, for doing it, and whatever I could find in the way of research, commentaries, and just books on these subjects, where these things came from.
And the fruit of them is our two links, right?
Yeah. So we've got a link to a video I did a couple of years ago, I think. 13 things I didn't know about Christmas, my own personal testimony, and then that's one of 3. So we'll put the first one up. If you want to keep going, you can. The second one is the first of 2 videos on Xmas cover-up. So it reveals some of the things we were never told as witnesses.
This is based on Alfred Edersheim's book, which was published when Russell was a young man in his 20s, so it was very accessible during all these seasons, and apparently some people have just chosen to ignore it on the date of Christmas specifically, and on the usual objections to Christmas. So that's a 2-parter. So again, we'll put the first part on your screen. The Xmas cover-up. See you next time.
Bye.